local CW. So even though I am not someone that's big into legalese, even though it seemed like it's taken forever, the House versus NCAA settlement filed today, which when you really break it down, there's a lot of things that matter. One, revenue sharing, rosters or at least scholarships, baseball from 11.7 to as many as in the lower 30s when it comes to baseball scholarships. And so NCAA and power conferences have filed the agreement on the settlement that is going to cost a lot of people a lot of money. Even if you're Houston Baptist who tried to fight it and they were told, listen, you could have gone somewhere else and not been a part of the NCAA. But really, are there any other options if you're not a part of the NCAA? 10-year deal, trying to pay back players because they were pushed back with NIL and much more. Craig Smoak, I know it's complicated. Amanda Kristovich, who's great at breaking down legal type stories for us, will join us in about 25 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, I guess this is all good. I really do not care for the legal part of, the broader conversation, but I understand why it's important. I think we got overran with it during the offseason for a couple months there, to the point we kind of had to push back and pull away from it because it just became too tedious to talk about. So I'm all for talking about it when it actually is where it's supposed to be, which is getting filed and getting pushed through and then getting put into place. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of other talk about this. I saw like a report every day of like, no, it's coming this week, or it's coming it's coming. And there's a delay here and a delay there and a delay here and a delay there. And I know our political system's got a lot going on right now, but yeah, I mean, this is good for now. I don't know if it's good for, beyond the length of this agreement. There's a lot that will take place between now and then, and a lot of unanswered questions. I don't know that Amanda's going to be able to answer everything herself, or that anybody really has the answers to what ultimately this all looks like years down the road. But for right now, it seems like a compromise that needed to be made, an agreement that needed to be reached to try and calm the waters as best as possible. So, yeah, I've enjoyed not really getting into the courtrooms for a while, even though we've talked about, the ongoing ACC situation. But that's different. That's interesting because that's like, hey, conferences could explode and cause, movement elsewhere. And so that's kind of fun. This is fun if you're an athlete, for sure.
Absolutely.
But I think as far as like a talking thing, long overdue, and I'm glad that we're actually, not talking about something getting done, but it's actually getting filed today. So, that's great.
All right, Ross Dellinger put this up. Painting the scene for an historic day. NCAA and power conferences filing, that's later today, this was some 7 hours ago, the long-form agreement and their settlement. The 10-year deal ushers in athletes' revenue sharing, abolishes scholarship limits, and creates arbitration for enforcement disputes. Implementation will be for the 25 and 26 school year.
Yeah,
what not to expect? Go ahead.
I don't want to, say that this is the answer, the end-all, be-all to everything, but right. I do think for right now, this has put a kibosh on the whole super conference breakaway, all of that. It hasn't stopped realignment discussions, but I do think the fear of like, hey, the SEC and the Big Ten are going to run off and leave everybody else behind. This helps to stem that off for the next few years, I believe. And I also think, though, however, like I say with most things that happen in college sports, if you're anybody who's not directly in line to benefit, take a deep sigh or take a deep breath and kind of enjoy this moment that you got to this finish line.
Yep.
But you better already have your head on a swivel for what's about to come down the pipeline, years from now.
Well, including everybody's going to pay the NCAA. Everybody a part of the NCAA is going to pay back to the back pay for athletes in this billion-dollar settlement. What not to expect? Guidance on how Title IX applies to the method of which schools choose to distribute revenue to athletes, anything truly groundbreaking, and the long form is only expected to provide specific around previously reported concepts. Separately, plaintiff attorneys will file a document outlining their distribution method for $2.8 billion in back damages to ex-athletes over a 10-year period. Their formula, possibly 75% to football players, may serve as a guide. And what you can do here pretty soon, once this is completely finished and at least official, schools can go online. For example, let's say you're Tulsa, and you can see the number you're going to have to pay because of the money that everyone's going to have to pitch in at certain points. Schools will be permitted, not required, though, to offer scholarships up to the new roster limit. So even if baseball can go to 34, you don't have to go to 34. You can stay where you are. You can do 20. You could do 33. But that's also something. It's not like they're shoving that where you have to reach that number, just like the options are there, Craig, with the revenue sharing in that $21 or $22 million range.
Yeah, that point we've talked about quite a bit of, the extra scholarships in various sports, including football. And I don't know what to think of that on the other side of it. I don't know how that changes things big picture. I don't know if that's bad news if you're a school that's not, Ohio State rich, or if that's great news because, you can pay more baseball players, and that's a good thing regardless of how competitive the field might be and how pricey that might get. So, it all sounds good like everything else, like every single decision basically that's been made over the last 2 years, it benefits the athletes. So, good for them. Again, a lot of this long overdue. A lot of this could have been avoided entirely if a bunch of old rich people had not been so greedy for so many decades. You wouldn't have ever even have reached this point. But now the dam burst, and it's nobody's fault but the ones that constructed the dam in the first place. So they're soaking wet now, and it's about time. And so it's great for the athletes. The scholarship thing in particular, I'm interested to hear more. Like, I know that Levi did an interview with I think I don't know if it was actually Mitch Thompson.
Mitch Thompson.
Okay,
yeah.
It was Mitch Thompson specifically, Baylor's baseball coach, and he seemed to be excited about the news, the number of extra scholarships in baseball. I'm sure all of those coaches are excited about that, but, competitively, I don't know what that does when you get to a point where Georgia can have 100 scholarship athletes or 105 and you're still paying 85. Like, how much of a difference does that make? Or guys just rotting away on the bench? Like, those are the things I'm not sure about and I'm far more interested in because that's, more directed onto the field. But, yeah, that's huge. The scholarship lack of limits or the raise of limits is absolutely massive. And one of the more interesting points of this entire ordeal, that and obviously the athletes finally getting theirs, although that does have the caveat of having to be within a certain time frame. So that's got to be pretty damn annoying if you're somebody who was like a year outside of that settlement period, and which concludes the majority of college athletes because it's only, the past however many years it was. I forget the exact number that we talked about. 10, the last 10 years specifically. So if you're outside of that sucks. But for those inside of it, yeah, it's a banner day for sure.
All right, so again, football, which is 85 now, will be 105, at least the option to 105. Men's basketball, women's basketball, 15. That's up a couple. Baseball's 11.7 will be 34 or can be. Softball 25, volleyball 18. Schools can offer scholarships to full rosters, not for this season, not for 24, 25, but for 25 and 26. We'll let Amanda break all that down, Kristovich, break that down for us here in about 15 minutes or so. Georgia, with yet another story. Ra Thomas, pretty darn good player. In fact, a really good player, has been arrested on battery, cruelty to children charges. It just came, like when I saw that, I'm like, okay, he was speeding 105 or whatever. And even then that would be just, okay, we've discussed enough is enough. This is not good. Not sure what his future is, if at all, with Georgia. He's a really good player, but they continue to have just one thing after another. And it's at the point now where you'll start to see numerous columns written. You'll start to see my Georgia administration has got to get involved. Georgia athletic director's got to get involved. Kirby Smart said he's been involved, but this is yet another not good story when it comes to Georgia football.
Yeah, and I don't know how much I care. I almost want to just sit back and let it unfold the way it's going to because Kirby Smart doesn't care, right? So why should I or why should anybody else, right? Why should we care? He doesn't even care. No, I think he cares to some extent, but it rings a little hollow. I really don't think they care as much as even has been portrayed, which seems to be very little. And I think it's going to take somebody like something. I'd say it's going to take something tragic happening. Something tragic already happened.
Already had that.
And there's been multiple things since then. Now, they're not all intertwined. like a guy drunk driving is not necessarily directly related, or a guy speeding in his Charger is not directly related, although similar actions to what created the massive tragedy from not that long ago. But, yeah, this is an entirely different thing. It does, lend credence to the whole, narrative of the program's out of control. If you're, a Florida fan or an Alabama fan or those who want to portray it that way, there's certainly a lot of incidents that you cannot deny, no matter how you want to try and spin it as a Georgia fan or whatever. There's been a whole lot of noise and a whole lot of police interactions ongoing. This, is a situation where you've got a guy who just came over from Mississippi State, so he hasn't even, had a cup of coffee with Georgia, but, really big picture-wise. He's been there a pretty short amount of time, but was arrested in January 2023 by Georgia police, so, right when he, first got there last year, and accused of felony false imprisonment because he confined and detained a person, allegedly, without legal authority because he stood in front of the dorm room door, blocked the exit, and told the woman that she could not leave. He was also accused of misdemeanor battery because he intentionally caused visible bodily harm by causing bruising to the right biceps and bruising and abrasions to a woman's shins. All those charges were dropped back in March of that year. He played 8 games last year and, did fine, but with some time with injury. Didn't have, massive stats, 23 for 383 and a touchdown. But, yeah, it's definitely somebody who you were thinking a lot about when it comes to this season, and now it remains to be seen what his punishment will be. But that's a lot of legal activity for less than 2 years, of being on campus. And so I don't know if that's the way that Ra Thomas is, or if it's, a crazy girl on the other side of the allegations. But, man, when you have a program where so many things have seemingly have been ongoing, it's like, yeah, man, what the hell is going on in Athens, Georgia?
We've seen this. I said this is many years ago, many years ago, that it seemed like it's hard, and Garrett and Craig, you guys can give me your feedback. I hope you do, that it seemed like it's hard to compete at the highest level to win a national championship in football without numerous legal issues that follow right after that or are during that time. Doesn't mean if you're 6-6, 7-6, you don't have them either, but it just seems like there's a certain edge of some players you have to be able to compete at that specific level.
I think for me on that situation, yes, but at the same time, if you look at Nick Saban and what happened to Alabama, I think you could make a case that during Nick Saban's entire tenure as the football coach at Alabama, he kept a cleaner house per se than what Nate Oates has done in his time there. So I think there's weird in certain scenarios where different coaches and staffs do a better job of it. But at the same time, you can't continually have this go on. And we've seen this happen multiple times. LSU has this type of issues all the time, and it's something that needs to be addressed. But I think it kind of varies from program to program, personally.
Yeah, I don't think that you have to have the guys. I mean, this guy right here, we're talking about, I don't think you need somebody with 3 counts of cruelty to children in the second degree and 3 counts of battery. And I just listed off 2 more incidents where he's apparently holding a woman against her will or beating on her. I don't think you need that kind of edge. I think there is an element of, having an edge, and yeah, you can correlate teams having success with guys getting in trouble, but I don't think there's anything scientific behind that. I think that, there's probably deep down some correlation you can make, I suppose, but I don't think that's something I necessarily buy into or believe that's a must to go and win national championships. But there is seemingly a common thread there, although a guy getting arrested for having a little bit of weed is a lot different than a guy being a part of somebody being killed or somebody being beaten or held against their will. So yeah, you don't need that much edge to go and win national titles.
I don't have any. I have some examples. I don't have 25 years worth of examples. It seems to me that is a trend. That doesn't mean every year, but it seems to me that it's a trend, and maybe it's more like every 5 or 7, 8 years than it is constantly. But I do think that there's an edge you have to be able to play at that level, at that specific level, and we'll see what Georgia might do. Arizona, welcome to the Big 12. It's not official, I think, until August the 1st, but look at their field. They have now laid down the Big 12 logos on the field in between the 20 and 30-yard lines on either side. Congratulations, Arizona, and all the new schools that come in will be doing that. And plus, I'm sure on their uniforms, but there we are with Arizona, the Wildcats, and their football field in Tucson. Cincinnati and initially when I saw this, I'm like, oh, damn, I didn't know they were playing Miami, Florida. Cincinnati and Miami, Ohio. The football series coming to an end. Miami forced the issue by canceling trips to Nippert in 25 and 28. Cincinnati then decided to do the same with trips to Oxford in 27 and 29. I've seen Chad go back and forth with Miami, Ohio fans, etc., but that series, that's too bad. Both of them in Ohio, that series is coming to an end.
Yeah, I mean, not sure about the reasoning behind that. I'm not well-versed in Cincinnati and Miami of Ohio history. Need to not sarcasm at all. Probably, brush up on that, or maybe not, since it's coming to an end anyways. But I do feel like I'm constantly still trying to learn a little bit about Cincinnati and these other programs. I mean, for goodness sakes, in the last year alone, there's been 8 new schools that we've all had to learn a bit about and are continuing to learn about just in the Big 12 alone, much less all the other movements around each league. So, yeah, I don't know what precipitated this, but I'm sure some of the banter filled in the blanks. And I guess if you were somebody who enjoyed this, and obviously there's that Ohio regional rivalry element, then yeah, maybe it sucks that it's going away, or maybe it's for the best. I don't really know. But
they started the series in 1888.
Well, then, yeah, that's a long time.
Well over 100 times they've played.
You hate to see that. There's been a lot of 100-year type rivalries that have broken, or have now, reignited due to conference realignment. Those are some of the ramifications of moving conferences, especially going across the country in some cases. So, yeah, wasn't aware of that. Like I said, need to brush up more on the Cincinnati rivalry history, but sounds like a bummer if you're letting go that much history, but also sounds like both sides are pretty ready to let it go based on the responses. So
Miami won last year, 31-24. It's 55 wins for Cincinnati, 54 wins for Miami, Ohio, and 4 ties. And goes back again, back into the 1880s when that series began. How about UCF? We've discussed the recruiting. Gus Malzahn, year 2 of the Big 12. Today, Jamarian Gordon, cornerback who was committed to Alabama, has flipped to UCF. Good win here. Head up with a cornerback from Jackson, Alabama, has been committed to Crimson Tide since May. Quote, when I go first round out of UCF, my legacy will live forever. So a nice pickup with recruiting and UCF. And not sure, there's still, 3 months, 4 months before signing day in December.
August, September, October, November. It's a little over 4 months, about 5 months. But, yeah, close enough. It just seems like that sounded way too soon, but I guess it's not that far off, actually. But, yeah, there's still a long ways to go and locking down this class. But that seems like absolutely massive for UCF. I mean, to be able to say you flipped a guy from Alabama, I don't know, the details behind his whole recruitment, but to see them, be able to pull a move like that and add another 4-star to a class that's already got not quite a handful, but getting close to a handful of 4-star guys, that's awesome for UCF. And right now they've got the number 2 class in the Big 12 for 2025, which you seem to think, or at least I a moment ago seemed to think, still had a really long way to go. But no, it's got about 4-5 months left to go. So I think most classes are pretty well 75% or so locked in now at this point. That can vary depending on what school you're looking at. But, yeah, we're about to hit that stretch run where football takes precedent and you're trying to keep it all together or finish it off over the course of the football season as well. So they can go and have a good season and keep drumming up the energy and the momentum and throwing all their weight behind being in a power conference and having this opportunity and having their resources together and being able to fully flex their muscles. I mean, there's a lot of people that believe UCF is one of those schools that could stand to benefit really greatly from the moves. And I think last year was a little bit of a, wading into the water and kind of figuring things out. And they seem to have recruiting really rolling and a lot of great transfers. And I think if they have some success on the football field, we could really see this thing take it off to another level. But, yeah, that's massive recruiting news for the Knights.
And then this story we'll get to later on Southwest Airlines changing their philosophy or their policy. We'll get to that later as just an offbeat story about their when you just get on board, you find your own seat. That was interesting and how a lot of people reacted to that. But coming up, Amanda